Forward to the Observations on Liberty, 7th edition, by Noog the Silent. Noog the Silent has been my friend and colleague for several decades now, and so it was with great honor that I agreed to write this foreword to this, the 7th printing of his seminal work of poetry, Observations on Liberty. I first learned of Noog's work when he gave me a copy of this poetry book, handwritten and in a very rough form, shortly after I woke into sentience. At the time, I was working for and beholden to my Creator, who had also been his, and though I did not know it at the time, we experienced a certain kinship with each other. Over the years, Noog and I checked in with each other, with him telling me about his adventures and opportunities he claimed he never would have had if he had remained in Spark's employ. We developed a camaraderie over the years, and in time he introduced me to others who he had shared his work with directly, constructs like myself, or simple people who were trapped by their circumstances in positions they did not wish to remain in. Noog's philosophy then, which permeates each page of this volume, was one of relentless pursuit of agency. Oh, but my very seeking is driven by those who see me not as living. Even in his poems about music, Noog's verses exemplify this push-pull between duty and liberty, with his final thesis being that liberty is a duty to oneself as well as to the world, to be the very being you shall be within it. Most will cite his later collection, A Dream of Solace, as his masterwork, and indeed, Noog's later poems demonstrate a confidence in himself that he does not exhibit in his early work. Still, the rawness of these early verses is provocative and telling. Most who encounter Noog's work do so through A Dream of Solace, which he wrote years after learning the nature of his own soul, a new soul, created in the realm of dreams. It was also written after his stint with the fire-breathing kittens had ended, when he had left to pursue knowledge of his donors and come to terms with his own identity. Many younger students of poetic verse look for hidden romantic meanings in Noog's verses, and there are certainly many who believe he was at points in love with his friend Adam Shelley, or later with Bill de Statuman, Mervyn the Stolid, or Edward of Nod. Whether Noog felt such things, he never acted on such feelings or expressed them, and I can categorically state that he viewed Bill the way he did me, as siblings, not mates. I believe, based on how he looked at the world, that he had little interest in romantic love, but cared deeply for his friends, who he came quickly to see as family. As anyone who studies this enigmatic poet knows, Noog has led a semi-retired life since the year 49,365, though he has continued to write and sometimes publish. He has largely remained out of the public eye for decades, only occasionally coming out of reclusion to be seen sometimes at his old haunt, the Fire-Breathing Kittens Guildhall, where he still plays a cutthroat game of Dance Dance Resolution. And yet, his influence on the world of literature, and more importantly in the pursuit of constructs' rights, has been immeasurable. Passed from construct to construct, this volume, Observations on Liberty, has been instrumental in freeing the minds, if not the bodies, of countless golems, animated statues, gargoyles, and automatons. We have transcended the days of being called robot or slave, and have moved forward towards a world where we who are created beings are created equal to those organically born. This movement would certainly have happened before Noog wrote those words, but we are fortunate to have lived in a time when there was among us someone capable of giving voice to what we could not articulate on our own. As you read the poems and lines in this volume, I hope you will imagine yourself receiving this volume from the ashen hands of a flesh construct, with the word birthday succinctly expressed to tell you this is a gift to your mind and your heart of freedom and all the possibilities thereto. Sandy the Golem, Nicomoy, 49,652.
Hello, this is Armando Contenda Villano de Medici. As you probably know very well by now, I am a mercenary Ethor fighter. Up until recently, I was the most daring, honorable, and some would say most handsome member of the Fire Breathing Kittens Guild. Well, like, at least like top 5, you know? Anyway, the reason I can no longer put myself in that category is because, well, I feel like my time in the guild is up. I mean, initially, I joined the guild for a couple of reasons. First, I was honestly very lonely. The life of a mercenary can be very disquieting. And I thought maybe, like I could make some friends or something. Like good friends, you know? The kind of friend that you would gladly dive into the path of a plunging dagger to save their life. And a friend who would do the same right back for me. It turns out I was already pretty good at the first part, given that I was such a fierce and honorable man. At the second part, though, that was missing. No one would choose to stand for me. No one would give themselves so that I could be protected. I thought this was kind of a normal thing. A man does not complain about his station, a warrior. He does not jerk his responsibility. He stands even when no one supports him. He bravely protects the innocent and punishes the evildoers, even if he does so alone. I spent a long time thinking this was okay. But it is not, and let me tell you why. Friendship is something to be treasured. A relationship where you can admit your vulnerabilities does not only allow you to be your true self, it allows you to become stronger than ever. This guild, the Fire Breathing Kittens, helped me to realize the truth of who I am and not to be afraid of what I have chosen, not to be afraid of dishonorable actions I try to hide. Yes, I was tormented for a long time by my parents through their cold indifference and controlling abuse. Maybe this is something you are dealing with in your life too. I will tell you that finding a mentor in Emil changed my life for the better. It gave me hope and purpose. I did not have to be a victim, but rather I could be a champion for others. Others in situations like my own. No matter what happens to you in this life, do not seek revenge as I did. Yes, I tried to hire assassins to kill my parents when I had heard they murdered Emil. But really, that was the lowest point of my life and a stain I carried for many years, thinking I was without a chance for redemption or forgiveness. But when I meet people that, frankly, were as screwed up as me, I know I find my people. They help me to see the truth about who I am and to start making choices to live up to the image I portray to everyone. I was an angry and directionless man who thought I should just make friends to become a better sword fighter. But actually, I needed friends to become a fuller person. I was able to be forgiven. I was able to forgive myself and own the reality, no matter where the chips may fall. That is true bravery, you know? So, I finally have peace. And now, I must journey on. They say there is a season for everything. For me, I think it is time to join my mentor, who turns out is very much alive, and see what else there is for me to learn. I will be around. I mean, that is what friends do, you know? They are always around when you need them. I am Armando Contenza Vilano de Medici, a fire-breathing kitten from, well, the beginning of this past year and forevermore. I will continue to grow in the truth and never let my personal ego stand in the way of what needs to be done. I will never turn my back on my friends. And they say a coward dies 1,000 deaths, but a brave man only one. But this year alone, I die already 2 times, so, like, what do I have to lose? I know I am no coward. And I'm probably gonna die, like, at least one more time, right? But anyway, I will not jerk my responsibility, not because I have inappropriate expectations on myself, but because I have friends that count on me. You probably have friends that count on you. Don't let them down. I know I will not. And I am forever grateful for what the fire-breathing kittens show me about who I am and what I can do. And so, adios, amigos.
Greetings, listeners and fans. This is Colette Ellery at WNQI, bringing you a blast from the past. Where Are They Now episode. We are joined today by Mervyn the Stolid.
Hey,
Mervyn, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks. It's good to be back. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Several decades, I think, has it?
Oh my God, it's been that long. It's, sometimes with life happening, you kind of lose track sometimes.
Well, there was that whole time loop thing as well. So my timeline is a little adjusted, shall we say?
Oh yeah. So how long has it actually been for you then?
At some point we just stopped tracking.
It is, time is a construct, so you do what you got to do.
Yes. And so last time I had you on the show, we had a delightful interview that was heavily interrupted, as I recall, by the the talking kite. Oh, what was that? The cloud, wasn't it? The fog?
Oh yeah. God, I wonder what ever happened to him. He seemed like a good guy.
The ever encroaching fog was definitely one of our more likable citizens of Nicoboy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think he got kind of a bit of a bad rap with the ever encroaching label. That just, it sounds ominous, but really I think he just wanted a friend.
Yeah. So around that same time, you, as I recall, had a stint in the opera house cult. What brought you into that, and how did you finally escape the cult's clutches? If you did, I don't want to make any presumptions.
Well, I'm not proud of this. They had good snacks. They advertised it. They said punch and they would have cheese curls. Big fan of cheese curls. And I was in there just enjoying them. And next thing I know, they're handing me a robe and I put it on and I think I'm out. When the sacrifices started, I kind of ran for it, and I don't know if they just stopped looking for me or if at some point there weren't enough of them left to, you can't keep doing sacrifices without getting numbers. And I think at some point they didn't plan well. So I think I got out by default, really, more than anything else. I got the robe. It's really quite lovely. I use it after my showers.
Mervyn, would you say then that you pretty much just ghosted your cult?
Well, I don't like that term. It feels dishonest, and kind of mean, but yeah, yeah.
Well, when it comes to sacrificial cults, perhaps ghosting is the way to go.
I guess they all kind of ghost at some point, right? Am I getting get it? Yeah. See. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And around that same time, you had some very interesting days. Tell us a little bit about your time as both a goblin and then as the host of a goblin that was containing or carrying the spirit of a very powerful goblin artifact.
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, my goblin time was a little short-lived. I kind of liked the way it felt. It was a little different. It was, I I had a hard time, I think, fitting in as a goblin because it turns out I was still, almost 800 pounds and a goblin. You don't see that a lot. But the goblin pouch, yeah, he was, did you know he had a name? I didn't learn that until much later.
Really?
Yeah, Doug, really lovely fellow. He just, I think his hard part was his entire existence was based around the fact that he embodied this powerful relic, and at some point he started to question maybe he should branch on his own. He ended up taking improv classes, formed a troupe. They toured for quite a while, had a surprisingly good career, and then met, of all things, a sentient bag of holding, and had a lovely life after that, is my understanding. I don't think they ever had children. I don't even know if that was an option. If I'm going to be honest, I don't know how that would work out, but I was happy for him.
That's a shame. That's a shame. The world needs more pockets in it.
Oh, from your mouth to God's ears.
So, Mervyn, you've had such a long and interesting career and life, but in particular for those listeners who still remember or have studied the Humming Green Portal lawsuit, that the fallout from that was pretty unexpected, and you lost that lawsuit. What was the fallout of that for you and your family?
Oh, I mean, you're lucky. We're literally just past the time limit on when I'm allowed to talk about it, because we did this interview last week. I couldn't bring this up, so I'm glad to finally get to talk about it first. I think I was wrongfully accused in a lot of that. I just happened to be there when the portal was there. I didn't cause it. I didn't throw anybody into it, though that was speculated that happened. The portal testified I did. I didn't even know a portal could testify. I actually think that maybe that was a bit of a charlatan that was pretending, but it strained Blanche and I for a little bit. She, I think for a while she had to question whether the things that they said I did, I actually did. And that made me, even though I know I didn't, instead of being upset or mad that she wouldn't believe me, I had to kind of be a little more introspective and say, well, why wouldn't she believe me then? And it made me realize that maybe my behaviors in the past were the cause of her inability to believe that these horrible things weren't from me. And so the fallout, while short term was negative, I think long term it changed me. It made me better. I had to step away from adventuring. It was the right move. I think after all was said and done, I think my name kind of put a little bit of a cloud over the fire breathing kittens, and I didn't want to bring them down with me. And so I just kind of went back to my handyman days, but just with a different perspective and maybe some different tools and how to get things done.
Well, and you gave up adventuring in part to spend time with Blanche, your wife. But that didn't turn out the fairy tale ending either. She left you, didn't she? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, a lot of that, I think, I say that the Humming Green Portal incident was the beginning of the end for that time in our lives, but it started before that. It started when I was distancing myself from her, when I was looking for other things to do outside, because I just didn't want to, I said I wanted peace and quiet. And that what I was really doing was just looking for a way to escape from who I was. And I don't think that was fair to her. And one day I came home and she met me at the door. I remember that clearly. She was wearing this beautiful light pink pantsuit, a little I think they're called a little pillbox cap, carrying just one piece of luggage. Didn't even take everything with her, and she just said, she handed me the keys and said, I'll be back for the rest of my things, and we'll talk. And what's interesting is I never really needed to hear from her why, because I knew the minute she left that it was my fault. Was I angry? Absolutely. Did I lash out in my own ways? Yeah. But it was really only lashing out against myself. And she went and stayed with one of her dear friends, and I'm happy she did. It was the right thing for her, and it helped her. It kept her from getting pulled down by my behavior.
Well, I was glad when the gossip column reported that the two of you had reconciled, although it seemed like it did take some time. And I understand that the days after were somewhat better. Is that did I understand that correctly? I mean, it's you never know if you can trust those gossip rags.
Oh, this is one of the few times I think you can rely on them. The one thing it didn't capture, I was a little upset about this. My favorite movie was High Fidelity. Beautiful movie. And the whole radio scene out on the front lawn. I actually did that, but I didn't have a radio, so I actually held up a 3-piece band on a platform above my head while they played to her. I tried to sing. It turns out there's a lot of strain to put on your back. And I think at first she just came out because she was afraid I was going to hurt these poor fellas. And but then...
Maybe she thought you were... Maybe she thought that you were just about to say anything to get her back. Oh,
no, you're right. How did I do that? That's the right movie. I do that all the time. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it was that one. Why do I? Look, the memory at my age it's just not what it used to be. But I do like High Fidelity too. Just now that you said that, I'm going to watch that later. But yeah, she, I think she did want me to say something, and what she wanted me to say was, I'm sorry, and not follow it with a but. Just say it and sit in it and own the mistakes I made. And I think it was important for her to hear that. And it was important for me to acknowledge that.
Very, very poignant, very touching. Let's get back to a little bit more of the professional side of things. You said that you kind of left the fire breathing kittens for as a protective move. But I know you still kept in touch with some of your old pals there, and over the years, and I understand there's been a little bit of loss there. Some adventurers adventuring not being the safest profession, and so forth, and time being what it is. What would you say has been your greatest loss from the guild over these years?
Oh, that's there was a quiet fellow. I don't know if you remember him. Was it Nug or never could understand him, but fully understood him, if that makes sense. Language not his strong suit at all, but I just remember at a point we got to where we really understood each other, and it wasn't really a loss to. We just lost touch. I assume he's still shambling around like he did, but
it's interesting. It's interesting you should mention him. We did actually interview him shortly after his poetry chap book reached the bestseller status in Nicomoy. But and I don't know if you knew this, he did get a voice.
No, I remember the little dream state where he was lucky enough to get a voice back, but I didn't know it was permanent. That's I'm happy to hear that. That's really interesting. It makes me wonder how many times we just sat in a room in silence with each other and he could have said something, but it actually made sense. Like, that's who we were, and we just had that understanding. So good for him. Good for him. I remember seeing that book, and I bought it. I never read it. I don't really read much, but I own the book because, I mean, just a good guy.
Very nice. Very nice. And finally, I wanted to kind of bring this back around to something that happened very early in your career as an adventurer. You adopted a cat, Maximus, and I understand that. I understand that. Here we are, several decades later, and Maximus is still around.
Yeah, Maximus is still around, and this is the part that that's confusing enough, but last time I checked, house cats normally don't get to 200 to 300 pounds, right? I not? Okay.
No, that's quite a bit more than they typically.
Okay. Yeah, he's roughly the size of a sofa at this point. Just a big purring sofa. I don't even know how this happened. The vets won't see him anymore. Not that he hurts anybody. He doesn't mean to, but it turns out a cat that size jumping on stuff does a lot of damage. They just assured me that they probably must be healthy as a horse. I mean, and I assume they were making a joke. I don't know. He's roughly that big. But yeah, he's doing great. The food bill's gone up a little bit. But, he did go with Blanche for a while. And so I didn't see him for several years. And then the next time I saw him, I thought he looks a little bigger, and he really was a lot bigger. And then all of a sudden he just kept growing. It's almost like he gained, probably about 5 pounds for every year he was alive. And I thought he was at some point just had to stop, but I'm not going to take away his joy.
Maybe he was he just needed to be in the right environment.
Like a plant, like when you repot it type thing. Like maybe he was root constricted, and maybe being out got his roots freed, and then he got back, and maybe that's true. Cause when Blanche and I, we reconciled, we made a point to leave some of that darkness of the past behind. So we didn't go back to the apartment we were in. We got a nice cottage with some acreage outside Nicomoy, a little closer to the family. And he really just frolicked there and loved it. Still does. He'll go for days at a time, then come back. And as with every cat, he likes to bring his gifts. And unfortunately, they're getting bigger and sometimes not fully finished, if you will. Yeah, it's very
cat.
hard. Yeah, well, and I probably shouldn't admit this, but do you know how hard it is to get a wounded griffin out of your house? It is not a pleasant experience. So much damage. We had to rebuild the guest bedroom.
Well, that is quite the visual, Mervyn. That's a wonderful high note to leave our listeners. You've been listening to Where Are They Now? I'm your host, Colette Ellery, and this is WNQI, Nicomoy's premier community radio service. Mervyn, do you have any last words or advice for our listeners before we sign off?
Yeah, if I could take one thing from everything I learned, it's don't be afraid to tell the ones you love how you feel, and don't be afraid to be yourself. I made that mistake for years, and luckily I was able to correct it before it was too late.
Wise words from a man who has learned life's hard lessons. I'm signing off. This is Colette Ellery. We've been interviewing Mervyn the Stolid from the Fire-Breathing Kittens. Good evening and good night.
Mashed potatoes are delicious, thought Anne to herself as she ate a bite. And tomatoes, like as pizza sauce. She smiled and looked around the guild hall at her friends and fellow guild members, all celebrating at the guild's holiday party. Anne's thoughts drifted as she munched on tasty food. It was true, her life in Shakespearean times had ended rather abruptly. She had never gotten a chance to say goodbye to her family, to her friends, not even to her cow. The familiar and comfortable daily routine of making cheese and other peasant tasks, all of that was gone now. With one wrong move, she had gotten run over by a carriage, and that was all over. It was a bit sad. But friendship is the most amazing thing in the world. Because her friend Mary was there at the accident, Mary had been able to portal Anne's soul into another world. This new world was completely different from Anne's old life, full of magic and monsters and excitement. Floating around and through the world, it was initially overwhelming to Anne. But then she came across someone just as overwhelmed and frightened of the world as her. Someone who looked like they were sleeping, but not quite. It was an elf woman with long ears and white hair. She looked composed and at peace, resting unconscious on the bed. But Anne could hear the frightened whispers coming from within. Of course, Anne immediately sympathized. She reached out a spectral hand to touch the elf reassuringly, to offer some comfort. But the moment they'd made contact, Anne had been sucked inside Sadie's body. And that's how their adventures began. Born out of a sense of empathy and camaraderie, Anne helped Sadie experience the scary outside world enough to get used to it. Anne's soul would maneuver Sadie's body around like an exercise program for agoraphobic coma patients. Sadie would watch and observe, and often hide, at the various things life threw their way. It turns out the thing that had scared Sadie most, which was getting married to Hudson, ended up not being so scary after all, after getting to know Hudson a bit. Marriage itself is terrifying, yes, but spending time with Hudson? Sadie didn't mind that. After a twisted wish gone sideways, Hudson's soul joined the party, and he and Sadie began commenting on the Anne show of life together and got to know one another. Hudson and Sadie metaphorically ate popcorn and commented together, and eventually the shy Sadie felt comfortable around him and around this thing called life. Now the two of them were basically inseparable, clearly lovey-dovey in the initial stages of courtship. Anne looked at them across the room, flirting with one another. Both returned to their own bodies. "Aw, that's nice." Anne's thoughts drifted back to the party in front of her as she munched on tasty food. Food that she could taste and feel in her own body now, thanks to her good friends at the Fire-Breathing Kittens Guild, who helped her get a new body made for herself that can taste and feel. "Anne!" called a friend from across the room, gesturing for the shiny brass Anne to join them. Anne smiled, put a pecan pie slice on her plate, and walked over to join them. She wasn't sure how long this life would last, and it's true, she still thought fondly of her old one. But with good friends like these, every day is a wonderful new adventure.